Hello, welcome PADI members around the world. Thank you for joining this very special Facebook Live session today. I'm here with our very esteemed guest, PADI President and CEO Richardson, and National Geographic explorer Enric Sala, marine ecologist and founder and leader of the Pristine Seas program. Thank you both for joining us today.
It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So last November, PADI and National Geographic Pristine Seas entered into a partnership to help advance marine protected areas. We're uniting under a shared mission to protect at least 30% of the ocean by 2030. At the heart of this partnership is a global economic assessment of the diving industry and a global call to action to you, our PADI dive centers and resorts around the world, to take a survey that can help save the ocean. This is a topic that we will explore further throughout today's conversation. So welcome, Enric. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'd like to speak to our PADI members about their very tangible role that they play in the success of this partnership in helping to create marine protected areas around the world. I'd like to start with this idea of economics. I heard a quote that you mentioned in your 2018 TED Talk, and this quote said, "When we align economics with conservation, miracles can happen." I really love this quote because with this partnership is rooted in economics and this idea of hope for the future in marine protected areas. Can you expand on a little bit further about this idea of miracles and how you've witnessed this miracle happen with your project Pristine Seas?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Katie and Drew. Such a pleasure to be with you again. So, when I grew up, I grew up on the Mediterranean coast of Spain. And I was watching these documentaries of Jacques Cousteau, and he showed us all these fish, right? Wow, it was amazing fish and dolphins, whales, sharks. But then I went swimming in the Mediterranean, and there was nothing. I never saw a big fish or a grouper. I never saw a dolphin. I never saw a sea turtle. And the biggest fish were about this big, smaller than my little mask. And, I thought that was natural. But then as I became a marine biologist and a diver, I learned that actually that's not natural, that there are so few fish. I saw so few fish in the sea of my childhood because they were overfished. They were taken out of the water faster than they could reproduce. But then one day I did my first scuba dive. It was on the Medes Islands Marine Reserve, north of Barcelona, which had been protected for a few years. That was my first dive in the ocean, in the sea, right? I did my course. That was in 80s. Oh my God, this is a long time ago, like 31 years ago or 32 years ago. I still remember, I get my head underwater and, oh my God, the groupers were there and the scorpion fish and the rays and the schools of sea bream and the sea bass. It was like diving in one of these Jacques Cousteau's documentaries. And I realized that, wow, this is what the ocean must have been like before we overfished it. This is what the ocean could be like if we got more of these marine protected areas. And look around. There are all these people here diving. There are all these dive centers making good business. And more people come here from all around Europe than any other place in the Mediterranean because this is where the fish are. When the fish come back, the divers come in, and the fish come back spectacularly. The ocean has this amazing ability to bounce back if we just give it some space. So this is where I understood that the protection not only helps the ecology of the place, but also it helps the business. This place has a no-take area that is tiny, only 1 square kilometer. Now it's larger, but when I was there, only 1 square kilometer. And that 1 square kilometer supported 200 people whose job was to take people to snorkel or dive to see the fish, plus the hotels and the restaurants and all the services, right? And so that reserve brings 12 million euros to the local town just to take people diving or snorkeling. plus all the economic multipliers. This is where I discovered that protection can be good business.
So is this part of what inspired you to approach PADI and Drew a couple of years ago and say, hey, how can we work together to advance this idea of marine protected areas? What can we do together to help really drive towards this protection goal of 30% of the ocean by 2030?
Absolutely. And not only that example, because that example, I've seen it all over the world. I've seen it in the Caribbean, in the Pacific Ocean, in the Indian Ocean, in Chile. It's amazing when you protect a place, on average, the fish come back, the abundance of fish increases 600% on average in less than 10 years. In most places, in 3 years only, 3 to 5 years, you already see a big difference between inside the reserve and outside these reserves. So it was seeing these all around the world that made me think that, wow, why isn't this happening everywhere? Because today, less than 3% of the ocean is fully protected from fishing and other damaging activities. So we need many more of these marine protected areas, which are a win-win-win. Everybody wins, even the fishermen who are going to catch more fish around these areas, because this is something else that we saw. When you protect these areas, the fish come back spectacularly. And something that is very important that management of fisheries doesn't do is that these protected areas allow the fish to grow larger. It seems like a no-brainer, but it is the large females that produce most of the eggs. A large fish produces a disproportionately larger number of eggs. You have a rockfish in California, for example, like this, a female like this, that will produce 30,000 eggs. You let it grow just a third, and it will produce 3 million eggs. Right? So imagine the potential for replenishment of the ocean if we let the fish grow old and large. Right? So this is what these areas do. And this production of eggs and larvae, together with the spillover of adult fish, helps to replenish the areas around. So in most of these areas, we've seen the fishermen catching more without having to spend more time at sea. So the catch per unit effort, their net economic benefits increase as well. So this works for everybody. And that was the inspiration for a first phone call that I had with Drew. It was during at the beginning of COVID, but we were able to go to a park. So I was in a park here in Washington, D.C. on the cell phone talking to Drew, and immediately, said, okay, let's do this.
Hi, Drew. I'm going to pass over to you now, pass the torch over to you. So last year we launched the PADI Blueprint for Ocean Action, our 5-point strategy on how we plan to tackle the key threats to the ocean. How do you see this partnership with National Geographic Pristine Seas and Enric and his team helping to fulfill our mission, and how we can do that together?
Yeah, thanks, Katie, and thanks, Enric. It's interesting listening to you speak some of the overlaps, because in the south of France, Cannes, Nice, I remember the fish, and in SRT in Medes Island, that's where I saw grouper and so on for that set aside, and it did give me hope. And I know that's your backyard and your home country, but you can see it there. And anybody that's watching this that's a PADI member across the planet has seen similar stories somewhere in terms of perhaps their reef is protected and they enjoy a robust ecosystem, and maybe their reef isn't protected and they can see the diminishing of unsustainable practices. Regardless, all of you watching this today have a role to play if you choose to, that we would encourage you to choose. So when Enric and I we've known each other since years, but when we first chatted about this, and I was enthusiastic to commit the PADI channel of dive centers and resorts to our mission hubs, if you will, to try to do something on the local level. In this case, the concept of stakeholders and economy is really important, because the local fishermen, they have to make a living and so on. But what's happening now is things are unsustainable and there's overharvest, and you heard about the fecundity of a fish based on size. That's pretty massive. Enric brings the science and the experience. We can bring PADI members, resorts, and retailers to say, look, here's what tourism, inbound tourism, meant to us and to our local community. we create a lot of jobs. It might be somebody who's filling cylinders. It might be somebody working in the restaurant. It might be a dive guide or instructor, boat captain. There's a lot of jobs just there. But then you've got villages and communities across this great landscape. If we can get members to fill this survey, and really I hope they all do, we can make an economic argument that Enric and his team can roll up into their academic research, which they've already got case studies in Mexico and other places, to say, look, this is what is brought to the area if you protect it. And so it's good for all stakeholders, and it's great for the ecology and the environment. And with that economic argument, we can affect policy in your local level if you're watching this, wherever you are, that might just set aside these marine protected areas. And perhaps we can connect the dots between them. That's pretty exciting. There are lots of marine protected areas. There's some fragmentation. But we want to leverage, we want to do good. So we're trying to leverage our membership that we know are really, they're empathetic. They feel the emotion of the sea, to do something, because there's so much hopelessness. I mean, I think we all feel, young people especially, they can't give up hope, but they have to see the action. And if, you can have hope forever with no action, nothing happens. To get our members that are watching this and encourage their colleagues to complete the survey, we'll put these data into this database, which can move the needle of policy and set aside marine protected areas and go for that sustainability, go for that diversity. How cool is that? When did anybody watching this think they would have the possibility to put something like that together? Again, it becomes a movement across the planet. We're in 186 countries. So it fits perfectly with our refocusing of our mission, with our 5 ocean blueprints in this MPA section, perfectly. And with that energy, with great brands and personas like Pristine, Geographic, PADI, all coming together, we can scale. And it's about scale. You've got to scale, and time, the clock is ticking, isn't it? So we've got to defrag ourselves and use our influence to good. And so I was just so inspired by our call from the park in Washington, D.C. in the middle of a pandemic, thinking about, let's do something together. So we're really proud and pleased, but it's dependent on the members watching this to participate. It really is, to get some good data collected so that we can make a difference in your backyard from an economic point of view. And then you'll see those grouper again, the schools, the pelagics, all the things that we love as divers to go see and enjoy very much.
Drew, how important is it that every dive center completes the survey? Everyone, because we've had questions like, I'm a landlocked dive center, or I'm a resort. Like, how important is it we get the information and the data from every single dive center, and how does that play into the final analysis that we're looking for?
Well, part of that's an academic question. So that gets down to, when is it statistically valid? So Enric and his colleagues can publish it in a peer-reviewed journal and influence policymakers. From my point of view, I would say it's important for everybody not to discount yourself, to make an argument for your local level. What are you doing that you've never calculated before, never thought it made a difference? What are you doing? What are you attracting? And I would go pre-COVID on this thing. I would go, what did you look like in 2019, which was a robust year? If you measure that, if your borders closed, if you're in Indonesia with 18,000 islands with borders closed for the last 2 years, you're not seeing any tourism. But I bet you're seeing some things bouncing back. But not as the protection thing is really what we're going for. So if you're a landlocked dive center, certainly. And I think we give these data sets to the academic professionals on Enric's team, who will make good science out of it and argue for good policy with people that can help us create marine protected areas across the planet. So I'll let Enric answer the second half of that, because he's the science guy. I'm just the Drew guy. So
just the Drew, yes. No, let me give you all an example. So my friend Octavio Aburto, who's a professor at Scripps Institution of Oceanography in California, he did a study like this in Mexico. But the difference is that instead of surveying 6,500 plus dive centers, he actually drove to every dive center in Mexico. He drove all along the coast of Mexico, Pacific, and Caribbean. And he was able to get data on what are the costs of running the dive center, what is the revenue, and he was able to get the net economic benefits for every one of these. And of course, the data are not published. Nobody knows. The data are all anonymous. Nobody knows when they see the results. Nobody knows how much a dive center is making. So that shouldn't be an issue. And what he found was that, surprisingly, the revenue provided by dive centers, without all these economic multipliers, right? Just the dive centers was similar to the revenue of the fishing industry in Mexico, which is huge. Now, what was the problem? What was the issue? The issue was that most dive centers in Mexico take their clients as customers to dive sites that are not protected from fishing. Imagine people go to these places to see an abundance of fish that is much lower than what it could be. And all of you divers, I know what the answer of my question is. If I ask you, do you want to go to a place with lots of fish or with little fish, right? That's such a no-brainer. So you have the fishing industry in Mexico overexploiting an asset that could deliver so much more benefits to the dive centers, to the communities that benefit from having divers coming to the dive centers, but also to the divers themselves, who can go to places that are absolutely amazing and not just right? So that was a very powerful pilot study that showed that, and something else that he found is that the dive sites that are in no-take marine reserves, places without fishing, are the ones that generate the greatest revenue for dive centers. Yeah. Of course, I don't want to go to a place that has nothing. I want to go to a place that is really amazing, especially after you get spoiled by going to really cool places. You don't want to go back, right? So this is why it is so important to get this data from as many of you as possible, so we can understand what are the economics of fishing compared to the economics of diving in every one of the countries, in every one of these 186 countries. And that will provide a very strong argument for all of you locally to ask for the protection of your dive sites so the fish come back and you can have a much better business. Now, you will say, well, what about the fishermen? Well, that's the thing. The fishermen will benefit from this too, because these areas, these protected areas, are going to be like fish banks. As I explained before, that they are going to help regenerate the ocean around them. So it's a win-win.
Thanks, Enric. I just want to take a moment to let the audience know that they can send in their questions. And at the end of the session today, we will be answering and taking some of those questions. And if you're just joining us, we're live today with Drew Richardson, PADI President and CEO, of course, and Dr. Enric Sala, explorer in residence for National Geographic and founder of Pristine Seas. And we're here today to talk about the partnership we formed last year and announced at DEMA. If you had the pleasure of joining us and listening to that announcement last year, where we talked about the first ever economic evaluation of the dive industry and the survey that you can take to help save the ocean. So we're talking about marine protected areas today and the survey and how PADI members around the world have a critical role in helping us do that. So Enrique, I'd like to go back to, just the premise of our partnership, which was to protect at least 30% of the ocean by 2030. And most of us at this point have heard this 30 by 30 or protect 30%. Why is it so important, this 30% of the ocean? Where does this number come from?
30% is a minimum we have to protect. So let's start with what the issue is. The issue is that we are overfishing the ocean. We are making it warmer and more acidic, which is killing coral reefs and marine life all around the world. But we also know that places that are protected with all the marine life are more resilient. They are more able to bounce back after warming events. And we have seen coral reefs, for example, that are fully protected, recover from warming events, whereas reefs that are not protected, that have lost all of the big fish, once they bleach and die, that's it, they're gone. So there are many studies showing that if we want to restore marine life and all the benefit it provides to people, including food security, economic benefits through diving tourism, carbon sequestration to help us mitigate climate change, protection of the coastal area by mangroves or coral reefs, for example, etc., we need half of the planet in natural state, both land and sea, if we want our life support system, the natural world, to continue providing for us. Otherwise, we're going to get into a global climate and nature catastrophe. That's going to be the largest humanitarian catastrophe in history. And half of the planet in natural state is what we need to prevent the extinction of 1 million species, and for nature to be able to continue giving us food, oxygen, stable weather, and all those things that make Earth a good place to live, the only place to live in the known universe. So 30% by 2030 is a milestone, is the minimum we need to achieve the 50% goal by 2050. And that's supported by many scientific studies, but also economic studies produced in the last few years have shown that a world with 30% protection is going to produce more food in the ocean and more economic benefits than the business as usual, where 3/4 of the fish stocks are already overfished, and we're seeing diminishing returns.
So I would say if I was on this call and I'm a dive center, a dive operator, resort around the world, that I really have a unique responsibility to play in this, taking care of the ocean and the future of this planet. And we keep talking about this survey, but really this is just one way that they can take very clear, tangible action to help create marine protected areas around the world. Drew, you coined or you said it earlier as well, the phrase mission hubs, to talk about our PADI dive centers and their role in this agenda to protect the ocean. And do you want to expand further on how we consider our PADI dive centers, our PADI mission hubs, and how they support this very real, tangible desire to help protect the future of our planet?
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting when you say we have to make half the world inhabitable. That in a way should say it all. Holy cow. I mean, our ancestors came up on an entire world that was habitable. And now it's like there's a lot more of us. And now we're just going for, let's get it halfway there. Holy cow. So we got some work to do. And so you think about, what can the dive industry do? Well, look, it's insight and in mind for all of us. That's good. We feel it. It's emotional. And we've got the concept of 6,600 brick and mortar affiliated businesses with PADI across this geography. So when we look at recasting our mission in our 50th anniversary about aggregate 1 billion torchbearers to explore and save the ocean, and we broke that down into 3 pillars, and we broke that down into 5 buckets, that's a concentrated look that broad spectrum addresses everything Enric just said in terms of carbon dioxide, coral, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You just refresh those buckets and you'll see all of them need attention. All of them have a sense of urgency. So the mission hub then becomes a local interpretation, expression that's culturally adapted with the local people, also inviting tourism to do something that when it may be in its own modest way, may not seem significant, but when you roll that up into this network of mission hubs, it becomes powerful, very powerful. So this survey is really just the start. And if I had a hope, and I do have many, that people listening to this take action to populate this survey. You can never have too much data. I mean, Enric knows that as a scientist. So, but you can have too little, because that's called statistical power. People will argue against, oh, that's not enough, or that's just that. Don't let that happen. Let your voice be heard. Decide and choose to say, my dive center, my resort is a mission hub, and our mission is to move the needle on that aggregating 1 billion torchbearers, people that feel and love the sea, to explore it and care for it. And we're going to do that across the spectrum of marine debris, marine protected areas in this case, the coral, the climate. That's really going to be our wheelhouse. And our partnering, Enric and his team have a megaphone. PADI and our divers have a megaphone. We're going to be blasting each other's messages, because guess what? They're the same message, and we need one another. We need one another to get this thing across the finish line. And we're attracting other partners too that are just thought leaders. I mean, this thing could go anywhere. Right now, The Economist magazine's having in media is having a week-long ocean summit. And another one of our partners, Block Pond, is a sponsor of that. Now they're making a choice. Well, what do they like? They like marine protected areas. So now you start to see. Now, if we can help them through your efforts filling out this survey and having that roll into a beautiful piece of science, we'll get those policy changes. You'll get more Meadows Island. You'll get more pour nights. Those of you who've ever been to the pour nights, my Kiwi friends used to tease me. You've got to kick the fish out of the way to get in the water. Well, that's pretty close. It's pretty good density close there. And that's just a colloquial expression, but you can see it, feel it when things are given a chance, and you can still enjoy it, and you can work it out with the local people who need to make a living as well. So it's about this action. So I guess it's a choice. If you listen to this, or if you're following it and you decide, then probably, well, you're probably not the right person. But I don't think many of PADI members feel that way. And I think we want to be good ancestors, don't we? So let's get busy and do something. When people look back at us, you can't change the past, but you can influence the future. That's what this is all about. So inspired by this partnership. It's just like, why didn't we do this earlier kind of feel. But we need our members' help. And I love what Enric said about why 30 by 30. Well, it's catchy, being a nice little tune, that'd be a nice song, but that's not enough. Like, why? He just said 50, so it should be. And I don't want to wait till night to 50. We're going to be old by then, Enric. Can you imagine that? 2050. Wow. How about 50 by 30? I mean, let's get busy.
Love it, Enric. I'd love for you to explain a little bit further to the audience. How do you see this survey supporting the creation of marine protected areas? So we're asking everyone to take this survey, but could you kind of give a little bit more information to close the gap between they take a survey, are they getting a marine protected area? Not exactly, but how is that information going to inform the process and what happens next?
Yeah, so this is something that we are now developing while the data keep arriving and we have enough data to be able to do the analysis. But the premise is something like this. Let's say country X, we have a survey from 75 dive centers, and we are able to show that diving actually brings more economic benefits and social benefits to that country than fishing. And in that country, fishing which is most likely for most countries, is actually overfishing, and the stocks are going down and the fishing are getting less and less. So the economic argument, we already know the ecological argument, that if you protect the place, the fish come back, right? But the economic argument now, which is more important for decision makers to make the right policies, finally we will have that economic argument. And then we ideally, we are at less than 8% of the ocean is protected today, and less than 3% is in fully protected areas from fishing and other activities. We need to quadruple that, right? That 8%. So we work with governments and communities around the world to create marine protected areas, but there are not enough of us. We need thousands, if not tens of thousands of marine protected areas created locally for local benefits. And this is something that we, National Geographic, cannot do. This is something that only you can do. Your dive center, you have to decide if you want not only to improve the health of your environment, but also you want to gain all these new economic benefits, right? And so it's up to you then to use this economic argument to organize your community to advocate for the protection of these sites. And this is something that we want to help with. And what we're developing now is a program to train local leaders, local advocates, who will want to lead the local process for creating local MPAs. And I say local, which is very important, because one of the comments here on the chat says that, unless Russia and China and India agree to this, there is nothing we can do. Well, actually, what happens in India affects the rest of the world when it comes to the climate. But when it comes to marine life, what happens in China is not affecting the fish in your reef, right? It is the protection of your reef that is going to deliver these benefits to you. Right? So this is very important, that local marine protected areas deliver local benefits to the people who live there.
I agree with that. And look, it's one small step maybe, but so was the first step on the moon. I think it's easy to be cynical and name heightened countries like that and say, well, whatever, give up. Why give up? I mean, if you give up, you're done. You're hopeless. So please don't be hopeless, because this is a way to take action, to feel like you're making a difference. And there's so many examples, aren't there, Enric, of local models where the people, look, you can start in Sipanen. Many people on this call maybe have been there, paying the local fishermen not to collect the turtle eggs. So they have to feed their family, but they figured out a sustainable model with that. And you can think about other places, Indonesia, where you have the local people that are actually part of the enforcement. They're out on boats and they're watching and so on. This is, I think what we have to remember is many of us are tourism, but I've always been most inspired by the kids in villages around the planet. That's their backyard, insight in mind, and they're pretty well informed about their local ecosystems, its strengths and its weaknesses, and concern, because they're going to be there their whole lives. So we should remember that the kid of today that's sitting on an island somewhere is probably better informed and more concerned and needs our help than ever before in the history of humanity. And so we can't just look at geopolitics and say, oh, there's this, that, whatever. We can make a difference. You can make a difference on the local level and not deny that kid his future, because it's his country you're visiting quite often. And I've seen that everywhere, many, many places. It's really inspiring. I don't want to let them down either. I'm sure nobody here does as well. So,
thanks, Drew. I agree. Enric, I loved what you just said about, National Geographic can't do this, Pristine Seas can't do this, but PADI Dive Centers, you can do this. And this is what, Drew, you were just saying as well, is that before we didn't have this ability, we didn't have this economic survey, we didn't have this, we weren't empowering you to take this action to do this. And Drew, you said it earlier, why didn't we do this sooner? But we're doing it now. And this is our great opportunity for dive centers around the world to really take this upon themselves, to take this action that they have in front of them to make a difference. And it's a 30-minute survey. That's just step one. Like Enric said, it's just the step, and Drew said it earlier, this is just step one of what's to come. And where there's lots of road ahead of us, but we have lots of opportunity by coming together and forging this really great partnership with people that care and that have the tools to make a difference. So that's what's really great with coming together with Pristine Seas, is that Enric and his team have over a decade of experience, and they've protected, what is it? 6.5
million
square kilometers of the ocean. So he's just getting started, of course, and he wants to do more, 50% of the 50%. So just wanted to, again, remind everyone here to take that survey. And that's one of the reasons why we're here today, to really help everyone understand what the purpose of that survey is. Drew, any closing remarks to build on what I just said about why they should take the survey, or how it?
No, I think it's opening remarks. Do the damn survey. I mean, you've got the knowledge. See, this is the thing. This is institutional knowledge that's trapped in the good people that are watching this and the people that we can reach. And we're using our media to try to reach. So are Enric and his team. We're all trying to reach and cross-pollinate. But share your institutional knowledge, but then don't put your feet up, because it's just getting started. The truth is, if you don't, are you really going to feel like you're doing everything you could? And at the end of the day, you should always say, well, I did the best I could. What is the best that you can do? And I know that's important to you as a human being. Then do it. That's really it. So it's really just opening up. We're just getting started with this thing, and we want to see some power in the data that come back, and then we're going to do more with it, and we're going to help empower our local operators And that's the way we're looking at it. I would think, I mean, the PADI organization membership is what is now at a point where we can use that to scale because we've canvassed the globe, we can communicate, but we are reliant on institutional local knowledge. So that is a compatible relationship. But if we just stay with ourselves, then we're talking to ourselves. So when we have a partnership like this, we can broaden that. And Enric was just telling us before the call that he's off this weekend to do MPA work, which is with policy change, really exciting policy change. And probably we won't jinx that right now, but that could be massive too in terms of set-asides. This is what they do every day, and we can help them and be good partners. But that's an individual choice as 1, will I be a mission hub? 2, am I going to make a difference at my local level? 3, have I filled out that survey yet? That's really those are the takeaways as I see them right now. But you're not done when that's done, but get that done anyway. So,
we do have a question that just came in from Jeff Bloomer. He's asking, will a toolkit be developed for dive centers to use to start conversations within their community to enact change? This is a great question.
That sounds like something that you and Enric's team are going to do. I hope.
Jeff, we are indeed going to do something almost exactly like that. And I'm going to hand it over to Enric to give a little more details on that one.
I love it.
No, just echoing what Katie says. Yeah, we're going to do that. We are now starting to develop it. And it's tricky, right? Because every place is different. And then it's not just a dive center saying, oh, yeah, we'll ask our local government to get this place protected, because there are the users of those dive sites that are, if they are fished, right? So this is not only the community of people who are going to support this, but also engaging the fishermen, the local fishermen, who also get a lot to win. But there is always a perception that they will lose if there is a protected area. So that's the trick, right? To work with all the stakeholders, so everybody understands that they all get to benefit, and then together come up with a plan that, for example, what Drew suggested before, what he mentioned before about CPADAN, right? It's a new model to get the locals to continue obtaining revenue from turtles, but instead of killing the turtle eggs, is making money of turtles that are alive. That comes, money that comes through tourism. You can only sell a fish once if you kill it. Yeah. You can sell it every day if it's in the water, right? To many more people. So it's the gift that keeps giving. So all these dynamics of building a community that supports this, including stakeholders, it's not easy, but it's the only solution. It has to be done from the bottom up and including everybody who has a stake in those places. So this is what we are starting to work on now. And definitely, this is part of the process. As Drew said, the survey is the first step. Once we have this economic data, by that time, when we have the analysis and the economic argument, by that time, we will have this plan for training the local leaders. And I have to say that I'm so happy for all the dive centers that have already filled the survey. We got so many answers already, which is fantastic. So I hope that others will join.
Yeah. Katie, when I hear, there's a few words that jump out. We're talking about sustainability, non-destructive, but stakeholder keeps coming up. And so it's like, what's in it for me? So, PADI members, that's your first question to ask yourself. And I think we've kind of answered it, teased some thought. Many of you already know what's in it for you. But what about that fisherman, or what about the local community? We have to be good partners with stakeholders around the table, the ocean table. And I think if the right things are in it for the parties around that table, assuming they're non-destructive, assuming they're sustainable, then everybody wins. And so that's the tough part, because there's politics, there's all kinds of reasons that people may feel threatened that we're going to take something away or we're part of something. We can't bog down in that. But we also have to be intelligent enough not to wave fingers without contemplating, like with any sort of negotiation, if you will, stakeholder interest. Assuming it's not non-destructive. If it's destructive, you see the fish, you eat it, you don't. It's not renewing. That's not very much vision to that. So that's the key. And so I only say that because so often in diving, we've been at it a while. The good old days, the good old days. Well, yeah, it used to be this, it used to be that. I even heard that in Sapadin. It really kind of annoyed me. A bunch of airplane pilots came in and they were saying, oh, you should have seen this here. And I'm thinking, I was here then. It was fantastic. It still is. But wow. We can't pass that on to the next generation. That's not, and nobody wants to hear that. But remind yourself this, today, at this call, these one day will be the good old days. What are we going to do with it? So this meeting, this date, 2022, will be looked back as the good old days. And maybe it'll be because we made things better starting on this day because you made a choice. That's the way I look at this. You're breathing, you got a heartbeat. Let's do something cool together.
Drew, and just to build on that, the question was, are we helping them with the toolkit and with information? We are fully committed. We came out with our new mission, the PADI Blueprint for Ocean Action. We're forming these really wonderful partnerships like with Enric and his team to make a difference and to uphold our responsibility to the ocean. And we're not going to say, take this survey and then leave you to fend for yourself in the marine protected area world. We're going to be there along the way to help you to do better, to build more resilient communities, to strengthen dive tourism around the world. So this is definitely a partnership among all of us. So
Katie, we also look there's foundations out there, even our PADI Aware Foundation giving grants locally. We're just getting started there, but we gave away a bunch of money, and we're going to do that every quarter to mission hubs that are doing work against that blueprint, that are doing sustainable work in MPAs over time. And we're attracting other partners to help fund that too. So there's so much work to be done. So nobody's on their own unless you choose to be. There will be a growing resource bucket to draw from for legitimacy. And we're just trying to get the thing started so we know what can be argued as sustainable for all stakeholders in a new and different way. And we're starting with diving, which thank goodness we have partners like this that see the values and have already done a case study in Mexico, which, by the way, I'm so jealous. I want to drive around Mexico to go to every site around both coasts. I mean, come on, that sounds like a great safari.
Well, I think we've covered all of our bases today. Enric, did you have any closing remarks that you'd like to share with the PADI members before we say goodbye today?
No, just I'm jealous because I get to go on some expeditions several times a year, but you live there every day and you have access to the ocean every day, especially during the pandemic. I've never been more jealous of all of you. But I want to thank again all those who have already submitted their responses, and this is going to be really transformative. It's going to be a triple win. Very excited to finish this first step on this partnership with PADI and all of you so we can get to action and bring those fish back.
Drew, anything else to say today?
No, I mean, here to all that. I believe in the PADI membership. I know the soul of the PADI membership and the spirit, and we're just trying to connect dots by leveraging our brand strength to bring in legitimate partnerships that you can now amplify your voice, because I know you're concerned. That there's no question. And I want to thank Enric and his team for just their spirit of cooperation and open-mindedness and the camaraderie that we quickly and concern that we quickly developed, because this is a massive issue that it's fragmented and we're trying to consolidate so we can scale by bringing in the right people at the right time. And Katie, for your moderation, thank you very much. I wouldn't have your job for anything. I don't know how.
Thanks.
Enric and I think behaved pretty well.
Yes, you guys are wonderful, and thank you, Enric. It's always an honor. Thank you so much, and thank you for all your life's work on Pristine Seas and the continued work that you are doing. And good luck on your expedition. And for all those listening, thank you for joining us today. This will be recorded, so if you've missed the beginning, please turn into the beginning. And the link for taking the survey is PADI.com/take the survey. So we made it easy enough for everyone to remember. It's about a 30-minute survey, so please find some time now, today, this weekend, near future, to take that survey to help save the ocean. So thanks, Enric. Thank you, Drew. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks very much, Katie, Enric.
Take
Good to
care.
see you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for everybody watching.